Hi everyone, and welcome to the Child Protection Party YouTube page. It's great that you could be with us to talk to us about the issues that concern you the most. And we'd like you to be able to comment below. Let us know what you think about the posts that we have, and particularly this one, which is in relation to Indigenous kids in care. This has been something that has troubled myself as a social worker and many that work in the child protection system forever, because the number of kids that are Indigenous, that are taken away from their family, that are removed from their family, is horrific. In fact, it's developing another stolen generation without the specific policies that were in place back in the 50s and 60s and even the 70s. This is still horrible to see the number of children that are being removed. Now, there are probably a whole host of reasons why people could justify the removal of Indigenous kids, but the reality is that it is horrible. It is, I was going to say genocidal, but that's a bit extreme, I guess. But what I will say is that it is such a disadvantage for Indigenous kids to be removed from their families, any child for that matter, to be removed from their families. And it is of concern to the Child Protection Party that it happens at the rate that it does. Now, I've worked with a number of Aboriginal families over the years, and the primary issue for me has always been that social workers have seen Indigenous families as being a problem simply because they were Indigenous. So there's no doubt in my mind that there's departmental racism happening within the Department of Child Protection. And once you start to identify a certain specific group of people and you look for fault within that group of people, you're likely to make decisions that are unhelpful, that are not about building relationships, that are certainly not about ensuring that the families are safe, and they're certainly not going to deal with the issues that cause the children to come under the attention of the department in the first place. Now, that happens right across the board too, where services are not provided for most parents who have, under the guise, or the gaze, I should say, of the department, but particularly with Indigenous kids. Now, I'm going to show you some statistics at the moment which have been produced by NAIDAC. And it's important to understand that also this is NAIDAC Week, and that the focus on Indigenous children is really important, and the removal of kids is a priority. So what I'm going to do is just show you some of these stats so that you can become aware of the disproportionate way that Aboriginal children or Aboriginal families are focused on, and the number of kids, consequently, that are removed. Now, I don't know where you can see this. It's in pretty small print, but I'll do my best. I'll talk to you a little bit about it. So the findings so this is a Family Matters report from last year, which is as current as you get, and it tells you the way it is. So 22,908 in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children are in out-of-home care, which represents 41% of all children in out-of-home care, despite Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children making, just think about this, they make up only 6% of the population, but they have 41% of all children in care. What does that tell you? Well, I'm telling you it's the focus of the department on Indigenous children because they see their parents as bad parents, and they refuse to work with those families in order to improve the outcomes for the family and for the children. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children are 10.8 times more likely to be in out-of-home care than non-Aboriginal children. Among Aboriginal children, Torres Strait Islander children in out-of-home care. So these are the stats. 41% are living with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander relatives or carers. 32.2% with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander relatives. So carers doesn't. So 41% living with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander relatives or carers. 32.2% with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander relatives, 22.1% with non-Indigenous relatives, 8.9% with other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander carers, 26.9% with non-Indigenous, non-relative carers, and 9% are in residential care. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children are 11.5 times more likely to be removed into out-of-home care as infants. So they haven't had the chance even to get to know their families. And they're 11.5 times more likely to have been removed. Only 15% of government funding is spent on prevention, such as family support services. The rest is spent on child protection and out-of-home care services. So the services once a child has been removed. So the services which are needed to keep the kids with their families just are not there. Only 15% of government funding is there. And really, that funding should be up around 60 or 70% in order to ensure that kids stay. But the reality is the governments don't care. Only 6% of child protection funding is directed towards Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community-controlled organisations. So what it's saying then is that 6%, only 6% of funding required or funding needed for out-of-home care services is provided to Indigenous people, and it's appalling. So it really basically says that as a community we don't care. We just don't care, and we should. Indigenous kids need to have the opportunity to be able to have their connections with their family, to grow up with their family, to understand their culture, to be the best person they can within their cultural framework. That is the most important thing for Indigenous kids, but most of them are taken from that. Most of them don't even get to know or even communicate with family members. And I've worked with many clients where that's just the case. So let us know what you think about that. It is an appalling situation. It definitely needs to change. And it needs organisations like us and for you to understand the inequities that sit within this system that prohibit Indigenous children from becoming a part of their family and in many cases their cultural community. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, keep you and your family safe.
Children's lives are important, and we at the Child Protection Party want the best outcome for all children.